Welcome back, dear listeners, to another soothing journey with boring history for sleep. Tonight, we invite you to discover one of archaeology's most extraordinary secrets, a 25,000-year-old civilization hidden beneath the weathered sandstone of Serra de Capivara in Brazil. Find your most comfortable position and dim those lights and let your mind drift as we explore underground networks that rival modern engineering. Astronomical observations more precise than Renaissance science, and knowledge preservation systems designed to survive tens of thousands of years. We'll walk through hidden chambers where ancient star watchers tracked celestial movements with impossible accuracy. Follow tunnel networks that span dozens of kilometers beneath the earth and uncover evidence of a sophisticated civilization that prepared for catastrophes with remarkable foresight. Tonight's journey will carry you through mysterious bone libraries, underground observatories that predate Stonehenge by millennia, and storage chambers filled with preserved knowledge that challenges everything we thought we knew about prehistoric human capabilities. These captivating tales of ancient wisdom and forgotten technologies will gently occupy your thoughts, drawing you away from daily concerns while guiding you toward peaceful rest. So settle in, close your eyes, and let the whispers of this lost civilization carry you into dreams of starlit chambers and ancient mysteries. The audio will gradually fade after 50 minutes, allowing you to drift naturally into sleep. Let these echoes from Serra de Capivara's hidden depths guide you to dreams of forgotten wisdom and timeless knowledge. Boring history for sleep. The lost civilization of Serra de Capivara. The first marks. The morning sun cast long shadows across the weathered sandstone formations of Serra de Capivara National Park in northeastern Brazil. Dr. Maria Santos walked slowly along the ancient pathways, her footsteps echoing softly against the canyon walls. She had been studying these rock formations for 15 years, yet something about this particular morning felt different. The air was still, carrying only the faint scent of dry earth and distant vegetation. Serra de Capivara holds the distinction of containing some of the oldest known rock art in the Americas, with paintings dating back over 25,000 years. This archaeological treasure, located in the state of Piauí, spans nearly 130,000 hectares of Caatinga landscape. The site was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1991, recognizing its exceptional universal value to humanity. Over 300 archaeological sites have been identified within the park boundaries, containing more than 30,000 prehistoric paintings and petroglyphs. Dr. Santos paused before a familiar panel of rock art, one she had documented countless times before. The paintings depicted the usual subjects found throughout the park: hunting scenes, ritualistic dances, and geometric patterns that seemed to follow no earthly logic. Animals that had long since vanished from this region gazed eternally from the stone canvas
their forms captured in red and yellow ochre by hands that had turned to dust millennia ago. But today, something was different about panel 347, as it was catalogued in her research files. The morning light, hitting at just the right angle, revealed previously invisible markings beneath the main compositions. Faint traces of what appeared to be symbols, arranged in precise mathematical sequences, became visible only when the sun reached this exact position. Dr. Santos had stood in this spot hundreds of times before, but never at precisely 7:23 a.m. on the autumn equinox. She reached for her camera, hands trembling slightly with excitement and exhaustion. The night before had been another sleepless one, filled with dreams of ancient peoples and whispered voices speaking in languages that predated human civilization as we know it. These dreams had been plaguing her for months, ever since she had begun working on her latest research paper about the astronomical alignments found throughout Serra de Capivara. The hidden symbols appeared to be star charts, but not of any constellation visible from Earth's surface. The mathematical precision was remarkable, far exceeding what should have been possible for hunter-gatherer societies of 25,000 years ago. Each symbol was positioned with astronomical accuracy, suggesting knowledge of celestial mechanics that wouldn't be formally discovered by European civilizations for another 20,000 years. As Dr. Santos documented the hidden panel, she noticed that the symbols formed patterns that seemed to extend beyond this single location. Cross-referencing with her extensive database of Serra de Capivara's rock art, she began to identify similar hidden markings at 17 other sites throughout the park. Each site revealed itself only under specific lighting conditions at precise times of day on particular dates throughout the year.
The implications were staggering. This suggested not just isolated groups of prehistoric artists, but a coordinated civilization with advanced understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and perhaps most intriguingly, a method of information storage that relied on natural lighting patterns. It was as if the ancient inhabitants had created a vast encoded library written in stone and light, designed to be read only by those who possessed the key to its temporal combinations. Dr. Santos spent the remainder of that day hiking between the 17 identified sites, carefully noting the specific conditions under which each hidden panel became visible. The pattern that emerged was unlike anything she had encountered in 2 decades of archaeological research. The sites formed a complex geometric arrangement across the landscape, with each location serving as a node in what appeared to be a sophisticated information network. The mathematical relationships between the sites suggested knowledge of concepts that wouldn't be formally described until the development of modern geometry. The distances between sites followed precise ratios, and when plotted on a map, they formed patterns that corresponded to various astronomical phenomena. It was as if the entire Serra de Capivara region had been transformed into a massive observatory and information storage system by its ancient inhabitants. As evening approached, Dr. Santos found herself at the highest point in the park, a rocky outcrop known locally as Pedra Furada. The natural arch formation had long been a subject of debate among archaeologists, with some arguing that its peculiar shape was the result of human modification rather than natural erosion. From this vantage point, she could see the locations of all 17 sites, and as the sun began to set, something extraordinary happened. The shadows cast by the various rock formations began to align, creating temporary pathways of darkness that connected each of the hidden panel sites. For exactly 13 minutes, as the sun moved across the horizon, the entire landscape transformed into what could only be described as a massive sundial or astronomical computer. The shadows moved with mechanical precision, indicating specific sequences and relationships between the hidden information panels. Dr. Santos realized she was witnessing something that had been occurring for over 25,000 years, a daily display of ancient knowledge that had gone unnoticed by modern science until this moment. The civilization that had created this system possessed not only advanced understanding of astronomy and mathematics, but also remarkable foresight in creating information storage methods that would survive tens of thousands of years without maintenance or intervention. As darkness fell over Serra de Capivara, Dr. Santos made her way back to the research station, her mind racing with the implications of her discovery. She had always believed that the rock art of Serra de Capivara held secrets about humanity's earliest civilizations, but nothing had prepared her for the possibility that these ancient peoples possessed knowledge that challenged fundamental assumptions about the development of human culture and technology.
The hidden panels suggested that the inhabitants of Serra da Capivara had developed sophisticated methods of astronomical observation and information storage thousands of years before similar achievements were documented in other parts of the world. The precision and coordination required to create such a system implied social organization and knowledge sharing on a scale previously thought impossible for hunter-gatherer societies. That night, Dr. Santos lay in her narrow bunk at the research station, staring up at the star-filled sky through her small window. The same stars that had guided the ancient inhabitants of Serra da Capivara continued their eternal dance overhead, carrying secrets that humanity was only beginning to rediscover. The weight of her discovery pressed upon her consciousness like a heavy blanket, filled with both wonder and the sobering responsibility of properly interpreting and preserving this ancient knowledge. The dreams that had been troubling her sleep for months now took on new significance. Perhaps they weren't merely the product of an overworked archaeological imagination, but something deeper, a connection to the ancient knowledge keepers who had spent their lives creating this vast stone library. As she drifted toward sleep, Dr. Santos wondered what other secrets lay hidden in the shadows and light of Serra da Capivara, waiting for the right moment and the right observer to reveal themselves. The underground network. 3 weeks after her initial discovery, Dr. Santos found herself descending into previously unexplored caverns beneath the main archaeological sites of Serra da Capivara. The Brazilian Institute of Archaeology had granted emergency funding
for ground-penetrating radar surveys following her preliminary report about the hidden astronomical panels. What they discovered beneath the surface was even more remarkable than the encoded rock art above. The radar surveys revealed an extensive network of artificial tunnels connecting the 17 surface sites where hidden panels had been discovered. These weren't natural cave formations carved by water erosion over geological timescales, but deliberately constructed passageways that followed the same geometric patterns observed in the surface astronomical alignments. The tunnels maintained consistent dimensions and gradients that would have required sophisticated engineering knowledge to achieve. Dr. Santos was part of the first team to enter the tunnel system, accessing it through a carefully concealed entrance near panel 347, where her discoveries had begun. The entrance itself was a marvel of ancient engineering, designed to remain invisible from the surface while providing easy access to those who knew its location. Heavy stone slabs had been precisely fitted to create a doorway that blended seamlessly with the natural rock formations above. Inside the tunnels, the air was cool and surprisingly fresh, indicating the presence of a ventilation system that had been functioning continuously for millennia. The walls were smooth and showed clear evidence of tool marks, suggesting the use of sophisticated excavation techniques. More intriguingly, the walls were covered with the same type of astronomical symbols found in the hidden surface panels, but here they were clearly visible without special lighting conditions. The tunnel system extended for over 12 kilometers beneath the park, with the main arteries connecting each of the 17 surface sites in a precise geometric network. Smaller branch tunnels led to underground chambers that appeared to have served various functions. Some chambers contained what looked like ancient workshops, with stone tools and partially completed artifacts still scattered on the floors where they had been abandoned thousands of years ago. Other chambers seemed designed for astronomical observation, with precisely calculated openings in the ceiling that allowed specific stars and celestial bodies to be viewed and tracked throughout the year. These underground observatories were positioned with mathematical accuracy that surpassed the capabilities of many modern astronomical facilities. The ancient engineers had somehow calculated the exact positions needed to track celestial movements with remarkable precision. The most significant discovery came in the central chamber, located at the geometric center of the tunnel network. This large circular room featured a raised platform surrounded by concentric circles of carved symbols. The symbols were unlike anything found in the surface rock art or the tunnel walls. They appeared to represent a sophisticated writing system, with recurring patterns that suggested grammatical structure and syntactic rules. Dr. Santos spent hours in the central chamber, carefully documenting each symbol and attempting to identify patterns that might provide clues to their meaning. The writing system seemed to combine astronomical data with what appeared to be historical records or narrative accounts, Some symbol sequences corresponded to known astronomical events that could be dated with precision, providing potential anchor points for translating the ancient language. The preservation conditions in the underground chambers were extraordinary. Artifacts that would have degraded long ago on the surface remained in pristine condition in the stable underground environment. Wooden implements, textile fragments, and even organic materials that normally wouldn't survive for more than a few centuries were found intact after 25,000 years underground. Among the preserved artifacts were star charts carved on thin stone plates, showing constellations and celestial movements with accuracy that wouldn't be matched by European astronomy until the Renaissance. The charts depicted not only visible stars, but also celestial bodies that shouldn't have been observable with the naked eye. Some charts showed planetary movements and eclipses, with dates extending thousands of years into both the past and future from when they were created. The engineering required to construct the tunnel system represented a level of technological sophistication that challenged conventional understanding of prehistoric capabilities. The tunnels maintained precise gradients for drainage and ventilation, with construction techniques that demonstrated understanding of structural engineering principles. The builders had somehow moved thousands of tons of rock and earth without leaving any trace of their excavation activities on the surface. Dr. Santos and her team discovered evidence of a complex society that had inhabited the Serra de Capivara region for far longer than previously believed. The archaeological layers in the underground chambers showed continuous occupation spanning at least 30,000 years, with technological and cultural development that progressed in ways that didn't match established models of human civilization development. The society appeared to have been highly organized, with specialized roles for astronomical observers, engineers, artists, and record keepers. The distribution of artifacts and symbols throughout the tunnel system suggested a sophisticated knowledge management system, with different chambers serving as repositories for specific types of information. Mathematical concepts were stored in certain areas, while astronomical observations were recorded in others. Most intriguingly, the ancient inhabitants seem to have possessed knowledge of geological processes that allowed them to predict and prepare for major environmental changes. Some of the symbol sequences appeared to describe climate shifts and geological events with remarkable accuracy, suggesting either detailed long-term observation or understanding of natural cycles that modern science is only beginning to recognize.
The tunnel system included storage areas that had been stocked with preserved foods and materials, as if the ancient inhabitants had been preparing for extended periods of isolation or environmental stress. These storage chambers contained evidence of advanced food preservation techniques and materials that remained usable after thousands of years underground. As Dr. Santos explored deeper into the tunnel network, she began to understand that she wasn't just investigating an ancient civilization, but a sophisticated knowledge preservation system designed to survive catastrophic changes in the world above. The entire complex seemed designed as a refuge and library, created by people who understood that surface civilizations might be destroyed, but wanted to ensure their knowledge would survive for future discovery. The implications were staggering. If the dating was accurate, the civilization that created this complex had achieved levels of astronomical, mathematical, and engineering knowledge thousands of years before similar developments were documented elsewhere in the world. They had created a system for preserving and transmitting knowledge across vast spans of time, using methods that had proved more durable than any modern information storage technology.
The Star Watchers. The translation work on the ancient symbol system had been progressing slowly but steadily over the past 2 months. Dr. Santos had assembled a team of linguists, astronomers, and mathematicians to help decode the writing found throughout the underground complex. Their breakthrough came when they realized that many of the symbols weren't representing words or concepts in the traditional sense, but rather mathematical formulas and astronomical calculations. The ancient writing system appeared to be primarily scientific in nature, designed to record and transmit precise observational data rather than narrative information. This explained why conventional linguistic analysis had yielded limited results. The symbols were functioning more like a specialized notation system, similar to modern mathematical or chemical formulas, rather than a typical written language. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead astronomer on the translation team, made the crucial discovery that many of the symbol sequences corresponded to specific astronomical events that could be independently verified through modern calculations. By working backward from known celestial phenomena, the team began to unlock the meaning of individual symbols and the grammatical rules that governed their combination. The star charts found in the underground chambers revealed that the ancient inhabitants had been tracking celestial movements with extraordinary precision for thousands of years. They had identified and named constellations that wouldn't be formally catalogued by modern astronomy until recent decades. More remarkably, they had calculated the movements of planets and predicted eclipses with accuracy that exceeded many contemporary astronomical predictions. The most startling discovery was that the ancient star watchers had apparently observed and recorded the movements of celestial bodies that shouldn't have been visible without telescopic assistance. Their charts included detailed tracking of Jupiter's moons, Saturn's rings, and various nebulae that require optical magnification to observe clearly. This suggested either the use of unknown optical technologies or observational techniques that modern science hadn't considered. Dr. Vasquez found evidence that the ancient astronomers had developed a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics thousands of years before similar theories were formulated by Kepler, Newton, and other European scientists.
Their calculations showed understanding of elliptical orbits, gravitational influences, and complex multi-body interactions between planets and moons. The underground observatory chambers had been precisely positioned to track specific celestial phenomena throughout the year. Each chamber focused on different aspects of astronomical observation, with some dedicated to planetary movements, others to stellar observations, and several designed for tracking what appeared to be artificial objects moving through the night sky. These artificial object observations were particularly puzzling. The symbol sequences describing them didn't match any known natural celestial phenomena, but they followed predictable patterns that the ancient astronomers had been tracking for centuries. The objects appeared to follow regular orbital patterns, but at altitudes and velocities that didn't correspond to any known natural satellites or debris.
The ancient astronomers had also developed remarkably accurate calendars that accounted for complex celestial cycles spanning thousands of years. Their calendar system incorporated not only solar and lunar cycles, but also the precession of equinoxes, planetary alignments, and various other astronomical phenomena that require extremely long-term observation to detect and calculate. Dr. Santos discovered that the astronomical knowledge preserved in the Serra da Capivara complex wasn't limited to observation and calculation. The ancient star watchers appeared to have developed practical applications for their celestial knowledge, using astronomical alignments for navigation, agriculture, and what seemed to be large-scale engineering projects. The engineering applications were particularly sophisticated. The tunnel system itself had been oriented according to specific stellar alignments, with different passages corresponding to the positions of various constellations at different times of the year. This created a kind of three-dimensional star map that could be navigated even when the surface sky was obscured by clouds or weather. The agricultural applications were equally impressive. The ancient inhabitants had developed planting and harvesting schedules based on complex astronomical calculations that took into account not only seasonal changes, but also longer-term celestial cycles. Their agricultural records showed crop yields and growing techniques that far exceeded what should have been possible with simple hunter-gatherer technology. More intriguingly, the Star Watchers seem to have used their astronomical knowledge for purposes that modern science couldn't fully explain. Some of the symbol sequences described what appeared to be communication techniques based on precise timing of astronomical events. The ancient inhabitants seemed to believe they could send and receive information across vast distances by coordinating their activities with specific celestial alignments. The communication techniques involved precise timing of various activities with astronomical events, suggesting a belief that celestial alignments could somehow facilitate information transmission. While modern science would dismiss such ideas as superstition, the mathematical precision of the timing calculations suggested that the ancient practitioners had developed these techniques through careful experimentation
and observation. Dr. Vasquez found evidence that the star watchers had been part of a larger network of astronomical observers that extended far beyond the Serra da Capivara region. Symbol sequences referenced observations made at distant locations, suggesting coordination between multiple observatories across vast geographical areas. The precision required for such coordination would have been remarkable even with modern communication technology. The network appeared to have been active for thousands of years, with observational records showing continuous data collection and sharing across multiple generations of star watchers. The consistency and accuracy of the records suggested highly disciplined scientific practices and sophisticated methods for training new observers and maintaining observational standards. The ancient star watchers had also developed theoretical frameworks for understanding celestial phenomena that went beyond simple observation and calculation. Their symbol systems included what appeared to be discussions of astronomical theories and debates about the nature of celestial mechanics. Some sequences seem to describe experimental procedures for testing astronomical hypotheses.
Most remarkably, the star watchers appeared to have predicted various astronomical events that wouldn't occur for thousands of years after their observations were recorded. Their calculations included eclipses, planetary alignments, and stellar phenomena that modern astronomy has confirmed will occur exactly as the ancient observers predicted. The precision of these long-term predictions suggested computational abilities that rivaled modern astronomical software. The ancient star watchers had somehow developed mathematical techniques for calculating complex celestial mechanics across vast timescales without the aid of electronic computers or advanced mathematical notation systems. As Dr. Santos delved deeper into the astronomical records, she began to understand that the star watchers weren't simply observing the heavens for scientific curiosity. Their observations appeared to be part of a larger project, a systematic effort to understand and predict changes in celestial and terrestrial conditions that might affect human civilization over thousands of years.
The Knowledge Keepers. The discovery of the teaching chambers deep within the tunnel complex revealed the most sophisticated aspect of the ancient civilization. These chambers had been specifically designed for the transmission of knowledge across generations, containing what could only be described as a prehistoric university system. The organization and methodology used by the Knowledge Keepers demonstrated educational principles that wouldn't be formally recognized by modern pedagogy for thousands of years. Dr. Santos found evidence of a carefully structured curriculum that progressed from basic observational skills to advanced theoretical concepts. The teaching chambers were arranged in a sequence that guided students through increasingly complex levels of understanding, with each chamber building upon knowledge acquired in previous stages. The progression showed remarkable insight into human learning processes and knowledge acquisition. The first chambers in the educational sequence focused on fundamental observation techniques. Stone tablets described methods for accurately recording celestial positions, measuring time intervals, and maintaining consistent observational standards. The training materials emphasized precision and attention to detail, with numerous examples of common observational errors and techniques for avoiding them. Intermediate chambers introduced mathematical concepts and calculation methods. The ancient knowledge keepers had developed sophisticated mathematical notation systems that allowed for complex calculations without the use of written numerals as we understand them today. Their mathematical system was based on geometric relationships and proportional calculations that could be performed using simple tools and materials. The mathematical training included advanced concepts that wouldn't be formally described in other civilizations for thousands of years. Students learned about geometric progressions, algebraic relationships, and what appeared to be early forms of calculus. The mathematical principles were always tied to practical applications in astronomy, engineering, or other useful disciplines. Advanced chambers contained theoretical discussions and philosophical examinations of the knowledge being preserved. The ancient teachers encouraged critical thinking and independent investigation with symbol sequences that appeared to be questions and exercises designed to test understanding and promote further exploration. The educational approach emphasized understanding principles rather than merely memorizing procedures. Dr. Maria Gonzalez, the educational psychologist on the research team, was amazed by the sophistication of the ancient teaching methods. The knowledge keepers had developed techniques for accommodating different learning styles and aptitudes, with multiple approaches to presenting the same information. Visual learners were provided with detailed diagrams and geometric representations, while those who learned better through hands-on experience were given practical exercises and construction projects. The assessment methods used by the ancient teachers were equally sophisticated. Students were required to demonstrate their understanding through practical applications rather than simple recitation of information. The assessment chambers contained evidence of complex projects that required integration of knowledge from multiple disciplines and original problem-solving approaches.
The knowledge keepers had also developed methods for preserving and updating their educational materials over long periods of time. The teaching chambers showed evidence of periodic revisions and updates, with newer information carefully integrated into existing curricula without disrupting the overall educational structure. This suggested institutional continuity spanning many generations. The selection and training of new knowledge keepers followed rigorous procedures designed to ensure the preservation of educational quality. Candidates underwent extensive testing and evaluation before being accepted into the teaching ranks, and their training continued for years before they were allowed to work independently with students. The professional standards maintained by the knowledge keepers rivaled those of modern academic institutions. The ancient educators had recognized the importance of practical application in learning, and many of the teaching chambers included workshops where students could apply their theoretical knowledge to real-world problems. These workshops contained tools and materials for construction projects, astronomical instrument making, and various other practical applications of their studies. Dr. Santos discovered that the knowledge keepers had maintained detailed records of their students' progress and achievements. These records showed that the ancient educational system had been remarkably successful in producing graduates who went on to make significant contributions to their civilization's knowledge and capabilities. The success rate of their educational programs exceeded most modern academic institutions. The curriculum included not only scientific and technical subjects, but also what appeared to be ethics and philosophy courses. The knowledge keepers seemed to understand that advanced knowledge carried responsibilities, and they spent considerable effort ensuring that their students understood the proper application and potential consequences of the information they were learning. The philosophical training emphasized the long-term perspective and the responsibility of each generation to preserve and expand knowledge for future generations. Students learned about the importance of accurate record keeping, the dangers of knowledge loss, and the techniques needed to maintain intellectual traditions across long periods of time and potential social disruption. The knowledge keepers had developed specialized techniques for memorizing and preserving large amounts of information without written records. These memory techniques were far more sophisticated than simple rote memorization, involving complex mnemonic systems that linked information to visual, spatial, and narrative frameworks that made recall more reliable and accurate. The memory preservation techniques included methods for detecting and correcting errors that might creep into orally transmitted information over time. The knowledge keepers had developed checking procedures and redundant storage methods that ensured information integrity across many generations of transmission. Their error correction techniques were more reliable than many modern information storage systems. Dr. Santos found evidence that the knowledge keepers had maintained active research programs alongside their teaching responsibilities. The educational chambers contained records of ongoing investigations and discoveries, showing that the ancient institution was not merely preserving existing knowledge, but continuously expanding human understanding through original research and investigation. The research programs appeared to be highly collaborative, with knowledge keepers from different specializations working together on complex projects that required interdisciplinary approaches. The collaboration techniques they developed allowed for effective coordination of research efforts across the entire underground complex and potentially with distant institutions. The knowledge keepers had also developed techniques for presenting complex information in ways that could be understood by people with different levels of education and expertise. They created multiple versions of important concepts, ranging from simplified explanations for general understanding to detailed technical presentations for specialists. Most remarkably, The knowledge keepers had apparently anticipated the eventual loss of their civilization and had designed their preservation systems specifically to survive extended periods of abandonment. The educational materials were organized and preserved in ways that would allow future discoverers to reconstruct their knowledge and educational methods even after thousands of years of dormancy.
The Great Preparation. As Dr. Santos and her team delved deeper into the underground complex, they uncovered evidence of what could only be described as systematic preparation for a catastrophic event. The deepest levels of the tunnel system contained vast storage areas filled with preserved materials, tools, and information resources that seemed designed to support a substantial population through an extended period of crisis. The storage chambers were organized with remarkable efficiency and foresight. Different areas contained different types of resources, each carefully preserved using techniques that had kept materials usable for thousands of years. Food storage areas contained grains, dried fruits, and other preserved foods in quantities that could sustain hundreds of people for several years. The preservation methods used were more effective than many modern food storage technologies. Tool storage areas contained everything needed to rebuild civilization from basic principles. Stone tools, metal implements, and even more sophisticated devices were carefully cataloged and stored in protective containers. The tool collections included not only everyday implements, but also specialized instruments for astronomy, mathematics, engineering, and various crafts and technologies. The information storage areas were the most impressive aspect of the preparation. The ancient inhabitants had created multiple copies of their most important knowledge stored in different formats and locations to ensure survival even if major portions of the complex were damaged or destroyed. Stone tablets, metal plates, and even thin sheets of preserved organic materials contained detailed information about every aspect of their civilization. Dr. Santos discovered that the preparation had been carried out over several generations, with each successive group adding to and improving the storage systems. The organization and inventory methods showed careful planning and coordination that extended across many decades of preparation time. The ancient inhabitants had anticipated the need for these resources and had worked systematically to ensure their availability. The preservation techniques used in the storage areas demonstrated advanced understanding of chemistry and materials science. Different materials were preserved using appropriate methods for their specific characteristics, with environmental controls that maintained optimal conditions for long-term storage. The storage chambers had been sealed and protected using methods that had prevented deterioration for over 25,000 years. Engineering drawings found in the information storage areas showed plans for rebuilding various aspects of their civilization using only the materials and tools available in the storage chambers.
The drawings were detailed and clear enough to be followed by people with no prior knowledge of the specific techniques involved.
Dr. Patricia Hoffman, the medical researcher on the team, was amazed by the sophistication of the ancient medical knowledge. The preserved medicines included compounds that modern pharmacology had only recently begun to understand, with preparation methods that maximized therapeutic effectiveness while minimizing side effects. The ancient physicians had apparently developed their medical knowledge through careful observation and experimentation over many generations. The preparation also included detailed maps and information about the surrounding region, with locations of natural resources, water sources, and suitable areas for agriculture and settlement. The maps showed geographical features with remarkable accuracy and included information about seasonal variations, climate patterns, and potential hazards in different areas. The ancient astronomers had apparently calculated celestial movements far into the future, possibly to help future inhabitants understand long-term patterns and cycles that might affect their survival and development. Dr. Santos found evidence that the preparation had been motivated by specific knowledge of coming environmental changes. Symbol sequences in the information storage areas described climate shifts, geological events, and other environmental changes with remarkable accuracy. The ancient inhabitants seem to have possessed understanding of natural cycles that allowed them to predict major environmental disruptions. The predictions included specific dates and descriptions of events that could be verified through geological and climate records. The ancient inhabitants had correctly predicted several major climate shifts, volcanic events, and other environmental changes that had occurred exactly as they had described. Their predictive accuracy suggested either detailed understanding of natural cycles or access to information sources that modern science hasn't recognized. The preparation included contingency plans for various scenarios, from temporary environmental disruption to complete civilization collapse. Different storage areas contained resources appropriate for different levels of crisis, with instructions for determining which resources to use under various circumstances. The planning showed remarkable foresight and understanding of crisis management principles. The ancient inhabitants had also prepared detailed instructions for re-establishing contact with other knowledge preservation sites that they apparently maintained in distant locations. The communication instructions included techniques for long-distance signaling, methods for confirming the identity and knowledge level of contacts, and procedures for coordinating recovery efforts across multiple sites. The preparation extended beyond mere survival to include methods for continuing research and knowledge development even during crisis periods. The storage areas contained materials and instructions for maintaining scientific observations and continuing the advancement of knowledge, even under difficult circumstances. The ancient inhabitants understood that knowledge development couldn't stop even during emergencies. Most remarkably, the preparation included detailed instructions for future discoverers who might find the complex after extended periods of abandonment. The ancient inhabitants had anticipated that their civilization might be completely lost and had left comprehensive guides for outsiders who might eventually discover and attempt to understand their knowledge preservation systems. The guides included basic introductions to their symbol systems, explanations of their organizational methods, and step-by-step instructions for accessing and interpreting the stored information. The ancient inhabitants had made every effort to ensure that their knowledge could be recovered and understood even by people from completely different civilizations who discovered the complex thousands of years later. The scale and sophistication of the preparation suggested that the ancient inhabitants had possessed remarkable foresight and planning abilities. They had anticipated not only immediate environmental challenges, but also the possibility of complete civilizational collapse and eventual rediscovery by future peoples. Their preparation had been designed to bridge gaps of thousands of years and enable knowledge transfer across vast spans of time and cultural change. Chapbite: The Warning Signs. The deepest chambers of the complex contained what appeared to be detailed records of environmental monitoring that had been conducted continuously for thousands of years. The ancient inhabitants had developed sophisticated methods for tracking climate patterns, geological activity, and various other environmental indicators that modern science was only beginning to understand and monitor systematically. Dr. James Morrison, the geological specialist on the research team, was astounded by the precision and scope of the ancient environmental monitoring systems. The records showed detailed tracking of temperature variations, precipitation patterns, seismic activity, and volcanic events across vast geographical areas and extended time periods. The monitoring techniques used were more comprehensive than many modern environmental research programs. The environmental records revealed that the ancient inhabitants had identified various warning signs that preceded major environmental disruptions. They had developed early warning systems based on subtle environmental indicators that could predict earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, climate shifts, and other natural disasters months or even years before they occurred. The prediction methods showed remarkable understanding of complex environmental relationships. The seismic monitoring records were particularly impressive. The ancient inhabitants had apparently developed techniques for detecting and interpreting subtle ground movements and vibrations that preceded major earthquakes. Their seismic monitoring network had extended across the entire region, with coordinated observation posts that could triangulate the location and predict the timing of seismic events with remarkable accuracy. The volcanic monitoring showed similar sophistication. The ancient inhabitants had identified various precursor phenomena that indicated increasing volcanic activity, including changes in ground temperature, gas emissions, and seismic patterns. Their volcanic prediction methods had apparently allowed them to evacuate populations and prepare for major eruptions well in advance.
Climate monitoring records showed that the ancient inhabitants had tracked long-term climate patterns and had identified the warning signs that preceded major climate shifts.
They had recognized that climate changes followed predictable cycles with various environmental indicators that could be used to predict when major shifts were about to occur. Their climate predictions had been remarkably accurate over thousands of years. Dr. Serra, the climate specialist on the team, found evidence that the ancient climate monitoring had identified several climate cycles that modern science was only beginning to recognize. The ancient inhabitants had tracked solar activity, ocean temperature variations, and atmospheric composition changes that affected climate patterns over periods ranging from decades to thousands of years. The ancient environmental monitoring had also identified various human activities that could affect environmental stability. The records showed that the ancient inhabitants understood the relationship between population density, resource consumption, and environmental degradation. They had developed sustainable resource management techniques based on careful monitoring of environmental carrying capacity. The records included detailed documentation of species population changes, with tracking of various animal and plant populations that served as indicators of ecosystem health. The ancient inhabitants had recognized that changes in certain species populations could serve as early warning signs of larger environmental problems. Their ecological monitoring was more comprehensive than most modern biodiversity research programs. Water resource monitoring was another area where the ancient inhabitants had developed sophisticated techniques. They had tracked groundwater levels, stream flow patterns, and water quality indicators across the entire region. Their water monitoring had allowed them to predict droughts, floods, and other water-related problems well in advance, enabling appropriate preparation and resource management. The ancient inhabitants had also monitored atmospheric conditions with remarkable precision. They had tracked air quality, atmospheric pressure patterns, and various atmospheric phenomena that affected weather and climate. Their atmospheric monitoring had contributed to their ability to predict weather patterns and climate changes with extraordinary accuracy. Dr. Santos discovered that the environmental monitoring had been integrated with the astronomical observations to create comprehensive prediction systems that considered both terrestrial and celestial factors. The ancient inhabitants had recognized that environmental changes on Earth were influenced by various astronomical phenomena, including solar activity, planetary alignments, and other celestial events. The integrated monitoring systems had allowed the ancient inhabitants to make long-term predictions about environmental conditions that extended thousands of years into the future. Their predictions had included specific dates for major environmental events, many of which had occurred exactly as predicted. The accuracy of their long-term environmental forecasting was unprecedented in human history. The monitoring records also showed that the ancient inhabitants had identified various artificial indicators that suggested human activities were causing environmental changes. They had recognized that certain technological developments and population growth patterns could lead to environmental degradation,
and had developed techniques for monitoring and managing these human-caused environmental impacts.
The ancient inhabitants had apparently used their environmental monitoring to guide their preparation efforts, timing their storage activities and resource management based on predicted environmental changes. Their preparation had been specifically designed to address the types of environmental challenges that their monitoring systems had predicted would occur. The environmental records included detailed instructions for interpreting various warning signs and taking appropriate action when environmental threats were detected. The instructions were clear and comprehensive, providing guidance for everything from individual survival techniques to large-scale population evacuation and resource management during environmental crises. Most remarkably, the environmental monitoring records suggested that the ancient inhabitants had predicted a major environmental catastrophe that would occur sometime in the near future from their perspective. The predictions included specific warning signs that would indicate the approaching event, along with detailed instructions for preparation and survival during the event. The predicted catastrophe appeared to involve multiple environmental factors occurring simultaneously, including climate shifts, seismic activity, and various other natural phenomena. The ancient inhabitants had calculated that the convergence of these factors would create environmental conditions that would be extremely challenging for human civilization to survive without adequate preparation. The warning signs for this predicted catastrophe were described in detail, with specific environmental indicators that would confirm the approaching event. According to the ancient records, many of these warning signs had already begun to appear by the time their civilization had completed their preparation efforts, suggesting that they had been preparing for an event they expected to experience personally. The departure protocols. Hidden within the most secure section of the complex, Dr. Santos discovered chambers that contained what could only be described as departure protocols. These detailed instructions outlined procedures for abandoning the underground complex under specific circumstances, with carefully planned steps for preserving essential knowledge and resources while evacuating the population to alternative locations. The departure protocols were remarkably comprehensive, covering everything from individual evacuation procedures to large-scale coordination of population movements. The instructions showed that the ancient inhabitants had planned for multiple evacuation scenarios, with different procedures depending on the nature and severity of the threat requiring departure from the complex. The protocols included detailed maps showing evacuation routes to alternative sites located hundreds of kilometers away. These alternative sites had apparently been prepared in advance, with basic facilities and resource caches that could support evacuated populations until more permanent arrangements could be established. The coordination required for such preparation would have involved thousands of people working over many generations. Dr. Lisa Park, the logistics specialist on the research team, was impressed by the sophistication of the resource management procedures outlined in the departure protocols. The ancient inhabitants had calculated precisely how much food, water, tools, and other supplies would be needed for different-sized groups during evacuation journeys of various lengths. Their logistics planning rivaled modern military evacuation procedures.
The departure protocols. Hidden within the most secure section of the complex, Dr. Santos discovered chambers that contained what could only be described as departure protocols. These detailed instructions outlined procedures for abandoning the underground complex under specific circumstances, with carefully planned steps for preserving essential knowledge and resources while evacuating the population to alternative locations. The departure protocols were remarkably comprehensive, covering everything from individual evacuation procedures to large-scale coordination of population movements. The instructions showed that the ancient inhabitants had planned for multiple evacuation scenarios, with different procedures depending on the nature and severity of the threat requiring departure from the complex. The protocols included detailed maps showing evacuation routes to alternative sites located hundreds of kilometers away. These alternative sites had apparently been prepared in advance, with basic facilities and resource caches that could support evacuated populations until more permanent arrangements could be established. The coordination required for such preparation would have involved thousands of people working over many generations. Dr. Lisa Park, the logistics specialist on the research team, was impressed by the sophistication of the resource management procedures outlined in the departure protocols. The ancient inhabitants had calculated precisely how much food, water, tools, and other supplies would be needed for different-sized groups during evacuation journeys of various lengths. Their logistics planning rivaled modern military evacuation procedures.
The departure protocols included procedures for destroying or securing sensitive information that couldn't be evacuated. The ancient inhabitants had apparently been concerned about their knowledge falling into the wrong hands and had developed methods for ensuring that critical information would be preserved for authorized recipients while being protected by potential misuse by others. Security procedures were integrated throughout the departure protocols, with methods for verifying the identity of evacuation participants and protecting against infiltration by hostile groups. The ancient inhabitants had apparently been concerned about various security threats and had developed comprehensive procedures for maintaining operational security during evacuation operations. The protocols included contingency plans for various complications that might arise during evacuation procedures. Alternative routes, backup communication methods, and emergency procedures were specified for dealing with blocked routes, communication failures, and other potential problems. The contingency planning showed remarkable foresight and understanding of the complexities involved in large-scale evacuation operations. Medical procedures were carefully integrated into the departure protocols, with specific instructions for caring for injured or ill individuals during evacuation journeys. The medical protocols included procedures for emergency treatment, patient transport, and establishing medical facilities at evacuation destinations. The medical planning showed sophisticated understanding of the health challenges associated with population displacement. The departure protocols also included procedures for maintaining knowledge continuity during and after evacuation. Key knowledge keepers were assigned specific responsibilities for preserving and transmitting critical information, with backup assignments to ensure that essential knowledge would survive even if some knowledge keepers were lost during the evacuation process. Dr. Santos discovered that the departure protocols had been tested and refined through practice evacuations conducted over many years. The ancient inhabitants had apparently conducted regular evacuation drills that allowed them to identify and correct problems with their procedures. The protocol documents showed evidence of multiple revisions based on lessons learned from these practice exercises. The protocols included detailed instructions for re-establishing their civilization at alternative locations. These instructions covered everything from site selection and initial settlement procedures to long-term development plans for rebuilding their knowledge preservation systems. The re-establishment procedures showed that the ancient inhabitants had viewed evacuation not as abandonment, but as relocation of their civilization to more secure locations. Coordination procedures with other knowledge preservation sites were described in detail, with methods for re-establishing contact with distant facilities after evacuation was completed. The ancient inhabitants had apparently maintained a network of interconnected sites that could provide mutual support during crisis situations. The coordination procedures showed sophisticated understanding of distributed system management. The departure protocols included specific procedures for sealing and protecting the underground complex after evacuation was completed. The sealing procedures were designed to preserve the complex and its remaining contents for potential future use while preventing unauthorized access by outsiders. The preservation methods were intended to maintain the complex in usable condition for thousands of years.
Most remarkably,
The departure protocols included detailed instructions for potential return to the complex after crisis conditions had passed. The return procedures specified how to safely reopen sealed sections, reactivate environmental systems, and resume normal operations. The ancient inhabitants had planned for the possibility that their evacuation might be temporary and that they might eventually return to their underground facility. The protocols also included procedures for transferring control of the complex to future generations or different groups if the original inhabitants were unable to return. These transfer procedures ensured that the knowledge preservation mission could continue even if the original knowledge keepers were no longer available to maintain the facility. Evidence suggested that the departure protocols had actually been implemented at some point in the complex's history. Several of the storage areas showed signs of systematic removal of materials, and some sections of the complex had been sealed using the methods described in the departure protocols. The implementation appeared to have been carried out in an orderly fashion, following the specified procedures. The timing of the departure could be estimated based on various archaeological indicators found throughout the complex. The evidence suggested that the evacuation had occurred approximately 22,000 years ago during a period of significant environmental changes that corresponded to the warning signs described in the ancient environmental monitoring records. The network revealed. Analysis of communication records found throughout the complex revealed that the Serra da Capivara site had been just one node in a vast network of knowledge preservation facilities that spanned the entire South American continent. The ancient inhabitants had maintained regular contact with similar installations located in the Andes, the Amazon basin, and various other strategic locations across the region. The communication records showed that this network had been operating for thousands of years, with coordinated research programs, shared resource management, and collaborative knowledge development across multiple sites. The scope and sophistication of the network challenged fundamental assumptions about the capabilities and organization of prehistoric civilizations in South America. Dr. Santos discovered detailed maps showing the locations of at least 12 other major knowledge preservation sites within the network. Each site had been positioned at carefully selected locations that provided optimal conditions for astronomical observation, environmental monitoring, and long-term preservation of materials and information. The site selection had required understanding of continental geography and geology that far exceeded what should have been possible for ancient civilizations. The network communication systems had used a combination of methods, including optical signaling, acoustic transmission, and coordination based on astronomical events. The optical signaling system used precisely positioned mirrors and reflected sunlight to transmit coded messages across vast distances. The signaling stations had been located on mountaintops and other elevated positions that provided clear lines of sight between network nodes. Acoustic communication had been used for shorter distance transmissions, utilizing natural geographical features that could amplify and direct sound waves across considerable distances. The ancient inhabitants had identified locations where specific acoustic properties allowed for long-distance communication using relatively simple sound production methods. The acoustic communication system showed sophisticated understanding of sound propagation and acoustic engineering. The most remarkable aspect of the network communication was the use of astronomical event timing for coordinating activities across the entire system. The network nodes had synchronized their activities based on precise astronomical calculations, allowing for coordinated observations, resource sharing, and information exchange without the need for continuous communication links. Dr. Roberto Silva, the network analysis specialist on the research team, found evidence that the communication protocols had been designed to function reliably across the vast distances involved in the South American network. The protocols included error correction methods, message authentication procedures, and redundant transmission pathways that ensured reliable information exchange even under difficult conditions.
The network revealed. Analysis of communication records found throughout the complex revealed that the Serra da Capivara site had been just one node in a vast network of knowledge preservation facilities that spanned the entire South American continent. The ancient inhabitants had maintained regular contact with similar installations located in the Andes, the Amazon basin, and various other strategic locations across the region. The communication records showed that this network had been operating for thousands of years, with coordinated research programs, shared resource management, and collaborative knowledge development across multiple sites. The scope and sophistication of the network challenged fundamental assumptions about the capabilities and organization of prehistoric civilizations in South America. Dr. Santos discovered detailed maps showing the locations of at least 12 other major knowledge preservation sites within the network. Each site had been positioned at carefully selected locations that provided optimal conditions for astronomical observation, environmental monitoring, and long-term preservation of materials and information. The site selection had required understanding of continental geography and geology that far exceeded what should have been possible for ancient civilizations. The network communication systems had used a combination of methods, including optical signaling, acoustic transmission, and coordination based on astronomical events. The optical signaling system used precisely positioned mirrors and reflected sunlight to transmit coded messages across vast distances. The signaling stations had been located on mountaintops and other elevated positions that provided clear lines of sight between network nodes. Acoustic communication had been used for shorter distance transmissions, utilizing natural geographical features that could amplify and direct sound waves across considerable distances. The ancient inhabitants had identified locations where specific acoustic properties allowed for long-distance communication using relatively simple sound production methods. The acoustic communication system showed sophisticated understanding of sound propagation and acoustic engineering. The most remarkable aspect of the network communication was the use of astronomical event timing for coordinating activities across the entire system. The network nodes had synchronized their activities based on precise astronomical calculations, allowing for coordinated observations, resource sharing, and information exchange without the need for continuous communication links. Dr. Roberto Silva, the network analysis specialist on the research team, found evidence that the communication protocols had been designed to function reliably across the vast distances involved in the South American network. The protocols included error correction methods, message authentication procedures, and redundant transmission pathways that ensured reliable information exchange even under difficult conditions.
The network had also maintained procedures for expanding to include new sites and for coordinating the establishment of additional knowledge preservation facilities. The expansion procedures had included site selection criteria, construction specifications, and integration protocols that would allow new sites to be seamlessly incorporated into the existing network structure. Most remarkably, the network records suggested that similar networks had existed in other parts of the world, with evidence of communication and coordination between the South American network and knowledge preservation systems in other continents. The intercontinental coordination had apparently involved even more sophisticated communication methods and had created a global network of knowledge preservation that spanned the entire planet. The global network coordination had used astronomical event timing and other sophisticated communication methods to maintain contact across oceanic distances. The coordination had involved shared astronomical observations, coordinated environmental monitoring, and exchange of knowledge and technologies between continental networks. The global coordination represented an achievement in international cooperation that wouldn't be matched again for thousands of years. Evidence suggested that the global network had been designed to preserve human knowledge and capabilities through major environmental catastrophes that could affect entire continents. The network had been created by people who understood that local or regional knowledge preservation efforts might not be sufficient to ensure the survival of human civilization through truly catastrophic events. The departure from the Serra da Capivara complex appeared to have been coordinated with similar evacuations from other network sites,
suggesting that the environmental catastrophe that had triggered the departure protocols had affected the entire South American network simultaneously. The coordinated evacuation had apparently been planned and executed as a network-wide operation.
The return. Archaeological evidence found in the upper levels of the complex suggested that the original inhabitants had indeed returned to the Serra da Capivara site approximately 18,000 years ago, several thousand years after the initial evacuation. The return had been carefully planned and executed, with systematic reactivation of the complex's systems and gradual restoration of full operational capability. The returning population had apparently been smaller than the original inhabitants, but they had brought with them new knowledge and technologies acquired during their time at alternative locations. The integration of this new knowledge with the preserved information in the complex had created an even more sophisticated knowledge base than had existed before the evacuation. Dr. Santos found evidence that the returnees had conducted a comprehensive assessment of the complex's condition and had systematically restored damaged or deteriorated systems. The restoration work had been carried out with remarkable skill and attention to detail, using techniques that had maintained the complex's original design principles, while incorporating improvements based on lessons learned during the evacuation period. The restoration had included upgrades to the environmental monitoring systems, with new observation stations and improved data collection methods. The upgraded monitoring had provided even more comprehensive environmental data, allowing for more accurate prediction of future environmental changes and more effective preparation for potential threats. New astronomical observation chambers had been constructed during the restoration, incorporating advanced techniques developed during the evacuation period. The new observation chambers had provided improved capability for tracking celestial movements and had allowed for more precise astronomical calculations. The astronomical upgrades had enhanced the complex's research capabilities significantly. The returnees had also expanded the complex's storage capacity and had improved the preservation methods used for maintaining materials and information. The storage improvements had included better environmental controls, more effective preservation techniques, and expanded capacity for maintaining larger quantities of resources and information. Communication systems had been upgraded to provide better connectivity with the broader network of knowledge preservation sites. The communication improvements had included more reliable signaling methods, expanded communication range, and better coordination capabilities. The network connectivity had been restored and enhanced beyond its previous capabilities.
Dr. Maria Fernandez, the restoration specialist on the research team, found evidence that the returnees had conducted extensive repairs and improvements to the complex's infrastructure. The infrastructure work had included upgrades to ventilation systems, water management, structural reinforcements, and various other facility improvements. The infrastructure upgrades had enhanced the complex's long-term sustainability and operational capability. The returnees had also implemented improved security measures based on experiences during the evacuation period. The security upgrades had included better access controls, enhanced surveillance capabilities, and improved procedures for protecting against various types of threats. The security improvements had made the complex more resistant to unauthorized access and potential security breaches. Educational systems had been expanded and improved with new teaching chambers and enhanced curricula that incorporated knowledge gained during the evacuation period. The educational improvements had provided better training capabilities and had allowed for more effective knowledge transmission to future generations. The educational upgrades had strengthened the complex's primary mission of knowledge preservation and development. The restoration period had also seen significant advances in the complex's research capabilities, with new laboratories and improved research facilities. The research upgrades had included better equipment, expanded experimental capabilities, and improved methods for conducting collaborative research with other network sites. The research upgrades had enhanced the complex's contribution to the broader knowledge development efforts. Records from the restoration period showed that the returnees had conducted systematic reviews of all preserved knowledge and had updated and expanded the information base significantly. The knowledge reviews had included verification of existing information, integration of new discoveries, and expansion of various knowledge areas based on experiences during the evacuation period. The returnees had also implemented improved procedures for maintaining the complex's operations over extended periods. The operational improvements had included better maintenance procedures, more effective resource management, and enhanced methods for ensuring long-term operational sustainability. The operational upgrades had strengthened the complex's ability to fulfill its mission over very long time periods. Dr. Santos discovered that the restoration had been planned and executed as part of a coordinated effort involving multiple network sites. The coordinated restoration had ensured that improvements and upgrades were shared throughout the network, and that all sites benefited from advances developed at individual locations. The coordinated restoration had strengthened the entire network's capabilities. The restoration period had lasted approximately 200 years, with systematic implementation of improvements and upgrades throughout that time. The extended restoration period had allowed for careful planning and execution of all improvements, ensuring that the complex's enhanced capabilities were properly integrated and thoroughly tested before being relied upon for critical operations.
Evidence suggested that the restored complex had operated successfully for several thousand years after the restoration was completed, continuing its mission of knowledge preservation and development with enhanced capabilities. The successful operation had validated the restoration efforts and had demonstrated the effectiveness of the improvements that had been implemented. The final abandonment of the complex had apparently occurred gradually over several centuries, as environmental changes and other factors had made continued operation increasingly difficult. The final departure had been carried out systematically, with careful preservation of all knowledge and resources for potential future recovery. The systematic final departure had ensured that the complex's knowledge and capabilities would be preserved for eventual rediscovery. The evidence of return and restoration provided remarkable insight into the long-term planning capabilities of the ancient inhabitants. They had not only prepared for major environmental disruptions, but had also planned for eventual return and continuation of their mission under improved conditions. The return and restoration demonstrated institutional continuity and commitment to knowledge preservation that spanned many thousands of years. The restoration period had also seen the development of improved methods for ensuring that the complex's knowledge would be accessible to future discoverers who might find the site after extended abandonment. These accessibility improvements had included better organization of information, clearer documentation of systems and procedures, and enhanced preservation methods designed to survive very long periods without maintenance.
The legacy awakens. As Dr. Santos completed her analysis of the Serra da Capivara complex, she began to understand that her discovery represented far more than an archaeological find. The ancient knowledge preservation system had been specifically designed to be rediscovered and reactivated by future civilizations that had developed sufficient scientific and technological capabilities to understand and utilize the preserved information. The accessibility improvements implemented during the restoration period had included subtle guidance systems that would lead qualified discoverers through the complex in a logical sequence, gradually revealing more advanced information as the discoverers demonstrated their ability to understand and properly utilize the knowledge. Dr. Santos realized that her own investigation had been following this carefully designed discovery path. The ancient inhabitants had apparently anticipated that their knowledge would eventually be rediscovered by a technologically advanced civilization that could benefit from their accumulated wisdom. The preservation systems had been designed not just to store information, but to actively facilitate knowledge transfer to qualified future recipients. The knowledge transfer mechanisms were more sophisticated than any modern information sharing systems. Dr. Santos found evidence that the complex contained information and technologies that were far in advance of current scientific understanding. The preserved knowledge included advanced physics concepts, sophisticated engineering techniques, and scientific principles that modern science was only beginning to explore. The advanced knowledge had been carefully organized to be accessible to future discoverers who had reached appropriate levels of scientific development. The astronomical knowledge preserved in the complex included precise predictions of celestial events extending thousands of years into the future from the present time. These predictions could provide valuable guidance for future space exploration, asteroid impact predictions, and various other astronomical applications. The astronomical data represented a scientific resource of extraordinary value. The environmental monitoring techniques developed by the ancient inhabitants could provide crucial insights for addressing current environmental challenges. Their methods for predicting climate changes, managing natural resources, and maintaining ecological balance had proved effective over thousands of years and could offer solutions to modern environmental problems. The environmental knowledge represented practical wisdom that could help address current global challenges. The educational methods preserved in the complex offered innovative approaches to knowledge transmission and learning that could enhance modern educational systems. The ancient teaching techniques had been remarkably effective at developing critical thinking skills and fostering deep understanding of complex concepts. The educational innovations could contribute significantly to improving contemporary learning and knowledge development.
Dr. Patricia Williams, the technology transfer specialist who had joined the research team, identified numerous preserved technologies that could have immediate practical applications. The ancient technologies included advanced materials, sophisticated engineering techniques, and innovative approaches to various technical challenges. Many of the preserved technologies were more efficient and effective than current methods. The medical knowledge preserved in the complex included advanced understanding of disease prevention, treatment methods, and pharmaceutical preparations that could enhance modern healthcare. The ancient medical practitioners had developed sophisticated approaches to health and healing that had maintained the health of their population for thousands of years. The medical knowledge represented valuable additions to modern healthcare capabilities. The network coordination techniques developed by the ancient inhabitants offered insights for managing complex distributed systems and large-scale collaborative projects. Their methods for coordinating activities across vast distances and time periods could provide valuable guidance for modern international cooperation and global project management. The coordination techniques could enhance current capabilities for managing complex global challenges. Dr. Santos discovered that the knowledge transfer process included built-in verification systems that would confirm whether the discovering civilization had developed sufficient wisdom and ethical understanding to safely utilize the preserved knowledge. The verification systems were designed to prevent misuse of advanced knowledge while facilitating legitimate scientific and technological development. The verification processes required demonstration of commitment to knowledge preservation, ethical application of advanced technologies, and long-term thinking about the consequences of technological development. The ancient inhabitants had been concerned about ensuring that their knowledge would be used responsibly by future civilizations. The verification requirements showed remarkable foresight about the potential dangers of advanced knowledge. As the research team worked to understand and document the preserved knowledge, they began to realize that they were participating in a knowledge transfer process that had been designed and initiated thousands of years earlier. The ancient inhabitants had created a sophisticated system for sharing their accumulated wisdom with future civilizations that met appropriate criteria for responsible knowledge utilization. The knowledge transfer was not simply a matter of accessing stored information, but involved active participation in learning processes that gradually developed the skills and understanding needed to properly utilize the advanced knowledge. The learning processes were designed to ensure that recipients understood not just the technical aspects of the knowledge, but also its appropriate applications and potential consequences.
Dr. Santos found evidence that similar knowledge transfer processes were occurring at other network sites around the world, as modern archaeological investigations uncovered more components of the ancient global knowledge preservation system. The coordinated rediscovery suggested that humanity had reached a level of development where the ancient knowledge keepers had determined that their preserved wisdom could be safely transferred to modern civilization. The implications were profound. The rediscovery of the ancient knowledge preservation network represented an opportunity for modern civilization to benefit from thousands of years of accumulated wisdom and technological development. The preserved knowledge could accelerate human progress while helping to avoid mistakes and problems that the ancient inhabitants had already solved. The ancient knowledge keepers had left detailed instructions for establishing modern versions of their knowledge preservation networks, with updated methods that incorporated contemporary technologies while maintaining the essential principles of long-term knowledge preservation and responsible development. The modern network could help ensure that current human knowledge and achievements would survive for future generations. The reactivation of the knowledge preservation mission represented a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern capabilities, creating opportunities for human development that honored both technological advancement and long-term sustainability. The ancient inhabitants had successfully transmitted their most important legacy across 25,000 years of time, demonstrating that human knowledge and wisdom could transcend the limitations of individual civilizations and contribute to the continuous development of human understanding. As Dr. Santos stood once again in the main chamber where her discoveries had begun, she understood that her work was not ending but beginning. The ancient knowledge keepers had successfully completed their mission of preserving and transmitting their wisdom across vast spans of time. Now it was her generation's responsibility to continue that mission, preserving current human achievements while building upon the ancient wisdom that had been entrusted to their care. The stars that had guided the ancient astronomers continued their eternal dance overhead, carrying the same secrets and possibilities that had inspired the knowledge keepers of Serra de Capivara. The legacy of the ancient civilization lived on, not as a relic of the past, but as a continuing contribution to the endless human quest for knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. The boring routine of careful observation, patient documentation, and systematic preservation continued, as it had for thousands of years, ensuring that human knowledge would survive and flourish across the centuries yet to come.
The knowledge keepers of Serra di Capivara had finally succeeded in their ultimate goal, ensuring that their accumulated wisdom would contribute to the continued advancement of human civilization. Their legacy was not preserved in stone and symbol alone, but in the living continuation of the knowledge preservation mission that would carry human understanding forward into the distant future. The ancient dream of permanent knowledge preservation had been realized, creating an unbroken chain of wisdom that connected past, present, and future in an eternal commitment to human learning and development. As our exploration of Serra di Capivara's ancient mysteries draws to a close, we leave behind the underground chambers and hidden knowledge of a civilization that understood the importance of preserving wisdom across the vast expanses of time. The star watchers and knowledge keepers who once walked these tunnels have completed their mission, successfully transmitting their understanding across 25,000 years to reach our modern world. Their legacy reminds us that human curiosity and the quest for knowledge are timeless, connecting us across millennia through shared wonder at the mysteries of existence. As the ancient astronomers who tracked celestial movements through patient observation, we too are part of humanity's endless journey toward understanding. Let the gentle rhythm of discovery and preservation that guided these ancient peoples now guide you into peaceful sleep. The same stars that illuminated their careful observations continue to shine overhead, carrying the eternal promise that knowledge, once preserved with care, can bridge any gap of time or circumstance. Rest now, knowing that the patient work of understanding our world continues, just as it has for thousands of years. The ancient knowledge keepers of Serra di Capivara can finally rest, their mission accomplished, their wisdom safely passed to future generations. Sleep well, dear listeners. Dream of star-filled chambers and the quiet satisfaction of knowledge preserved for eternity. Until our next journey through history's gentle mysteries, may you find the same peaceful rest that now embraces the ancient halls of Serra di Capivara. Sweet dreams.